Bonjour. That is about as much as I will butcher French today. It's an honor to be here, and before we talk about what it means to stand together against hate, before we name what's broken and lift up what's working, I'd like to start with something personal. My father is 99 years old. He'll turn 100 this October. He shares the same birthday as Dwight D. Eisenhower. And like Eisenhower, my father served in the European theater operations during World War II. He was part of the 4035 Quartermaster Truck Company, black soldiers sent across the ocean to fight fascism, men who risked their lives for freedom, that truth be told, they were still being denied at home. Now, his transport ship was to take him to England, but their convoy got scattered by U-boats. He ended up off the coast of Spain and finally found port here in France at Le Havre. When I asked him if that was terrifying, being cut off and drifting in hostile waters, he didn't hesitate. He said to me, not as terrifying as being in the Army base in Van Dorn, Mississippi, or Camp Polk, Louisiana. He said it to me quietly, like he wasn't just giving an answer, he was remembering. Those were Army bases where black soldiers were regularly beaten when they left it, where some were lynched. Army bases on US soil. My father was in Reims, not too far away from here, when the peace treaty was signed, VE Day, in May of 1945. The war ended, but not the struggle. While he was stationed there in Reims, he fell in love. A French woman, 18 Rue de Mulhouse. That's where his love lived. That's where her family treated him like a son and a friend. And that's where my older sister, Monica, was born. I never got to meet Monica. She passed away from pneumonia when she was 4 years old. But I carry her with me always. Her story, the ghost of what might have been. She is part of what brings me here today, not just as a speaker, but as someone with a living connection to its country and to this people. I'm gonna drop this on the floor for now. I'm also a punk rocker. I too fell in love in France, though not with a person, but with a place, a spirit. In 1988, I was a broke kid living on less than $500 in Vercors, in the region just out of a city called Grenoble. I was in a town called Villard-de-Lans. I worked odd jobs. I relied on the room and board from a school. I attended, hitchhiked, shared meals and rides with strangers. I listened to people who didn't speak my language, but who understood what it meant to search for meaning, for belonging, and for justice. It was there that I learned something that I still carry with me, that liberté, égalité, fraternité wasn't just a slogan in some old history book. It's a promise often broken, but still worth keeping, still worth fighting for. And I want to be clear. I'm not here today to say France has figured it out. Neither is the United States. What I am saying is that France, those years ago, gave me something rare. The space to become someone who believes, not in the perfection of coexistence, but in its necessity, its struggle, its power. So that's part of who I am. That's part of where I come from. And it's part of what led me here today. Now let me tell you why I'm here. I've spent nearly 3 decades studying organized hate and violence, not from a distance, but up close. inside hate group spaces, often before the headlines. I've tracked the rise of neo-Nazis. I've worked with law enforcement, civic leaders, and grassroots organizers. I've warned that anti-Semitism is not a relic of the past. It's a warning light of what was coming. Anti-Semitism doesn't only threaten Jewish people. It destabilizes democracy itself. It's the conspiracy theory that holds organized racism intact. In the United States, we've watched this unfold in real time. Charlottesville, Tree of Life, Poway, Jersey City, Colleyville. The names pile up, each one a scream in the dark. And for a long time, that darkness came mostly from one direction, the white nationalist movement. Fueled by the replacement theory, a story told over and over again in the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, written in French in a novel called The Camp of Saints, written in English in a novel called The American Turner Diaries, The Great Reset, and centuries-old anti-Semitic lie. But something has shifted in recent weeks, and we need to talk about it honestly. There have been 2 attacks on Jewish people in the United States in the last 2 weeks. And this time, it wasn't white nationalists. These attackers claimed to be acting in solidarity with Palestine. That matters. Let me be clear. It is possible, it is essential to oppose violence being perpetuated in both Israel and Gaza, to grieve for Palestinians and Israelis, and to still reject anti-Semitism without hesitation or qualification. Because targeting Jews or those in proximity to them for what a government does, any government, is not solidarity. It's scapegoating. It is anti-Semitism. And when people abandon our Jewish neighbors in the name of justice, they are not fighting for liberation. They are reenacting the oldest betrayal in the book. I want to say something directly to the Jews in the room. I see the pain you are carrying, the grief, the confusion, the exhaustion, the sense of betrayal by movements you believed in, by friends who suddenly fall silent, by a left that often treats your safety as an inconvenience. You are not imagining it, and you are not alone. You must be able to hold more than one truth at a time. We must be able to say that violence is unacceptable. And what's happening to Jewish people around the world is simply dangerous and unacceptable. That's not a contradiction. That's integrity. And to my friends on the political left, I say this as someone who has walked with you for years. If we cannot name and confront anti-Semitism in our own spaces, we no longer have the moral authority to demand justice anywhere else. You can't fight racism while ignoring its oldest form. You cannot fight authoritarianism while looking away from anti-Semitism that always comes with it. We must hold the line. Now, I know you all have spent the day deep into the patterns, the data, and the reality of anti-Semitism. I know it's heavy, but if all we do is name the threat, we haven't done our job. So I want to shift a little bit. I want to talk about what's working and what gives me hope, about what is possible when we refuse to give in to fear. You know, when we talk about allyship, people sometimes think it means standing in front of someone else's pain. But true allyship isn't about stepping in front. It's about standing with, shoulder to shoulder, not just in crisis, but in quiet, in the daily, difficult, unglamorous work of showing up. And it is happening right now in big and small ways. I think about a group of young black organizers in Georgia who, after Charlottesville, didn't just condemn white nationalism, they made a point of reaching out to the local synagogues there. They wanted to make clear, we see what's happening to you. They wanted to make clear that when white supremacy rises, it comes for all of us. They didn't wait to be asked. They understood the stakes. I take a local leader, a labor leader in Los Angeles, a Latino man, who changed his NGO's equity curriculum 10 years ago after seeing Jewish workers consistently sidelined in anti-racist discussions. He told me, if we're going to fight racism, that includes anti-Semitism, or else we're just drawing new lines between us and them. That's allyship. And in France, let's be honest, it's not all fear and fracture here as well. I've heard stories of Muslim and Jewish community leaders coming together after acts of violence. I've seen students build bridges that their parents have tried to burn down. Everyday people trying to tell a different story, one rooted not in nostalgia or denial, but in shared dignity. These stories mostly don't make the headlines, but they matter. They matter because they remind us that we are not helpless. We are not alone. Allyship is the antidote to despair. It's how we transform moments of terror into movements of solidarity. And let me say this clearly. I'm not here to tell Jews how to survive anti-Semitism. You've been doing that for centuries. I am here to say you do not have to do it alone. That's what a whole of society approach demands. Not performative statements, not press releases, but institutions across civil society taking responsibility. Schools that teach about anti-Semitism as part of an anti-racist education. Tech companies that stop treating hate speech as an algorithmic puzzle. Politicians who stop using Jewish trauma as a political prop. Movements that treat Jewish safety not as a side conversation, but as central to our shared future. And yes, non-Jews like me, who treat anti-Semitism not as someone else's issue, but as our own moral obligation. The good news is this: we know what works. We know that when people feel seen, when they are invited into community rather than pushed into corners, they don't just show up, they stay, they build, they lead. This is the moment to expand that circle, not tighten it. This is the moment to invest in those who are ready to live forward together. Let's talk plainly about the moment we are in. You have spent the day talking about anti-Semitism from all the angles, ideological, cultural, institutional. But I want to zero in on something dangerous and urgent. It's not new, but it's evolving. It's the strategic use of anti-Semitism as a political tool, and particularly how it is being deployed by some elected officials and far-right actors across the US and other places. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not here to say anti-Semitism only exists on the political right. It does not. There are some on the left who have treated anti-Semitism as a distraction, who have been quick to explain it away, to minimize Jewish pain, or to worse, to weaponize global conflict in ways that give license to harm. That failure is real, and it has caused real harm. But I also need to say this. The MAGA movement in the US is not simply tolerating anti-Semitism. It is cultivating it. It is normalizing it, and it is benefiting from it. Let me be plain. There are some in elected office in the United States who have opened the door to white nationalism in American public life. They have platformed it, they have winked at it, and they have hired it, and they have made it part of their coalition. That is not rhetorical flourish. That is a matter of public record. And let me be very clear. That movement of elected officials do not love Jews. They love using Jews. It loves using Jews to shield itself from charges of bigotry, to deflect attention from its racism, to manipulate fears around Israel, to fracture pro-democracy coalitions, to grant moral cover to its agenda that is deeply authoritarian and deeply dangerous. And here's the trap. The more that movement claims to be true friends of Jewish people, the more isolated Jewish communities feel. That isolation is the point. It is intentional. It is meant to make Jews feel like they have no one else, that their only allies are those who will exploit their fear while stroking it further. It is meant to pull Jews away from the broader struggle for democracy, inclusion, justice, and most importantly, the right to belong, free from fear and bigotry. It seeks to turn anti-Semitism into a partisan wedge. We will not allow that to happen, not just because it's wrong, but because it's also dangerous. You see, the fight against anti-Semitism cannot be separated from the fight against racism in all of its forms. Because at its core, anti-Semitism is not just a prejudice. It is a racial conspiracy theory about how power works. It says that Jews are secretly controlling everything, governments, media, and banks, and that the only solution is to tear the whole thing down. Sound familiar? It's the same playbook white nationalists use to attack immigrants, to attack black communities, to attack gays and lesbians, to attack Muslims, and yes, to attack Jews. If we allow this moment to pit us against one another, we lose the only thing that has ever worked against this type of hatred: solidarity. Let me say again, you don't defeat authoritarianism with silos. You defeat it with shared purpose. I believe in a fight against anti-Semitism that does not require Jews to abandon their solidarity with anyone. I believe in a fight against racism that does not demand black and brown communities look away from anti-Semitism. I believe in a future where no one is asked to choose between their own safety and someone else's dignity. But to get there, we must refuse the politicization of the struggle. We must refuse to let the fight against anti-Semitism be used to attack movements for justice. And we must refuse to accept any political movement, left or right, that treats Jewish people as pawns rather than partners. It's easy to feel like we are losing ground. And some days, maybe we are. But I believe this: we still have a say in what kind of world we will build for this moment. That is our responsibility, to act on that belief. I believe in coexistence, but not the kind you find on a bumper sticker, not the kind that papers over injustice with polite silence, not the kind that requires erasure or assimilation. I believe in coexistence that is not cute, but complicated, messy, painful, real, and worth it. Because the alternative is a world where we live behind walls, where fear decides our politics, where we forget how to listen, how to weep, how to love across difference. I don't want to live in that world, and I don't think you do either. So what do? We stop waiting for perfect solutions. We start investing in imperfect, courageous ones instead. We refuse to be defined by the people who divide us. We remind ourselves that while we cannot shape all that happens in this world, what we do with the horror, how we carry it, how we respond, that is our choice. And that choice is our power. My father once told me something I've never forgotten. He said, you don't get to pick your moment in history. You only get to decide how you show up in it. That's what allyship is. That's what solidarity is. That's what love is. Thank you.